Live and pre-recorded, this is the Red Ticket Blues podcast. I am Brian Buckley. This is being recorded on May 16th. It hit the internets on May 17th. This show and all the other shows from the beginning of time of the Red Ticket Blues podcast can be found on iTunes, TuneIn Radio, Stitcher, YouTube, and Google Play. And hey, you want to follow me because I'm hilarious on @BrianBuck13 and @RedTicketBlues. So this week we switched it up a little bit. Normally I have a sports media guest on Thursdays for those people who are new to the show. But this week I will be traveling later this week. So what I did was we had the sports media guest early. We're going to have it on Tuesday. So this week's guest is John Jastremski, who's a sports talk show host at WFAN and at CBS Sports. We get into how he got involved in the business and what it's like doing national versus local and some other issues. And, of course, the sports going on in New York. So enough of me. Let's get to the podcast. He is a sports talk show host for WFAN and CBS Sports Network. He is John Jastremski. John, welcome to the Red Ticket Blues podcast.
Brian, my pleasure. Happy to be on. I'm glad I have a little bit of a voice after doing 5 straight shows and being a lunatic and playing some men's league baseball and like 0 hours of sleep. But I'm good enough to chat with you. I'm glad to be on. Let's have some fun. What's going on?
I'm very happy. It happens. You have a busy schedule, and I appreciate you making time and all those things going on. So here's a question from Twitter, and I think you're familiar with this Twitter follower, Disgusted NYER. He wants to know, John Jastremski, how come New York teams stink?
Good buddy Leslie in Fort Lee, one of my favorite callers. And
I don't really know how you answer that question, but this
is what you call the life of John Jastremski, or the life of any host over at WFAN, who is, just going to throw you a curveball, regardless of what time of the year it may be. The Mets, who were in the World Series last year, they stink because they lost 4 in a row and They lost 3 straight to the Colorado Rockies. And that's the thing about this business, Brian. It's a balance of trying to give, your opinionated take and be fair about a situation, but you don't want to sound like a lunatic when the team loses 3 or 4 games that the season's coming to an end.
It's funny, you got your start here with, you didn't get your start. You got your start with WFAN through the Fantasy Phenom, and a lot of people who enter the Phenom have no experience whatsoever. They're sort of just saying, what the hell, I'll go for it. You were a little different. You had an amount of experience that was pretty substantial. So I guess in the words of Joe Benengo, why don't you tell us a little bit about that, bro?
Yeah, so I graduated Syracuse 2010. Syracuse has an unbelievable broadcasting program, but I tell people this all the time, Bri. I got so much more experience by doing shows at the student radio stations where we would do Syracuse postgame for football and basketball. We'd have full lines of calls. We'd come on right after the game. For football, they'd give us a player interview. So it was really a big deal for that community. Like, even though it's students and they're 20, 21-year-old kids, you were kind of the authority on anything that's going on in a pretty big college town. I know we're not talking about New York City or Boston or Los Angeles, but when you talk about Syracuse, the Orangemen for football and basketball, it's a pretty big deal. So doing those shows, going to the Big East tournament, doing my general Saturday morning show where we go from Friday happy hour from about 3 to 11 at night. I'd get like 5 hours of sleep. I'd go to Starbucks, get my shot of espresso, and boom, I'm ready to go and do 2 hours of radio. That was like great experience for me in getting into this business. And maybe I was a bit misguided. Maybe I was just naive to the whole situation coming out of college with how difficult it was going to be to find a job. But I kind of was under the assumption, okay, I went to Syracuse. I was able to do a pretty good job for 2+ years. It's very, very competitive up here. I'm going to be able to find something on the air. And I went about 10 months out of college without a job in the sports radio business. And I'm a finalist for a couple of jobs. I'm not going to mention the city so I don't get in any trouble in that sort of regard.
Understandable.
But, I don't want to blow their spot, but I was sending demo tapes essentially all over the 50 states of America. I was willing to work anywhere. I would have worked in Buffalo. I would have worked in Washington. You give me this small town, I would have found my way if they gave me a microphone and they just paid me a little bit of money to do the shows. But long story short, 10 months in, I'm doing some sports writing down the Jersey Shore, covering high school baseball games, which was fun. I really enjoyed it. It was a fun summer. I was down the beach every day. I would go to baseball games. I'd write my story and then see what I wanted to do with the rest of my night. But I saw FAN, and I was always a big FAN guy. I'd listen to the station all the time. It was always my dream job to eventually get on WFAN. and I saw that they were having a Phenom contest, and I said, I got to go out for this. I got nothing to lose. Why the hell not? One thing leads to another. It goes from about, 500,000 people down to 50 people. And then once I got the call from Chernoff that I was going to be on Mike's show down at Ball Ray, that was like a huge deal to me. Like, not even thinking about winning the actual contest. I just kind of looked at it in the grand scheme of, okay, it's a demo tape. I'm going to be on TV.
People
I'm going to be on
will see
radio.
me. Exactly.
Exactly. Like, this is going to be very good for my brand. This is just going to be very good for me. Then I watched the other four guys go, and I said, all right, if I do a good job here, I got a pretty good shot. And then you look up, dude, and I don't know if you've ever been down at Ball Ray and the way they set it up. They kind of put you up on, like, a little bit of a platform where Mike does the show, and you're kind of, like, looking out at the crowd. And I got up, and I was very relaxed the entire day. My sister was with me. We're just chilling. I'm on my computer, exchanging all sorts of texts, tweets, all that good stuff. But when you actually get up there and you see all the people, you're like, holy crap, man. There's a lot of goddamn people here. I'm not even thinking about the amount of people who are listening and watching on Yes at the time, but end up doing my little 2-minute rant, had David Robertson on. Judges said I was the best, and I was like, all right, we'll see what happens. They said I was the best, but you don't want to get your hopes up, and then you end up winning the thing. It was unbelievable.
Did you have any idea, like when you got involved, when you said, oh, look, the Fantasy Phenom, I've seen that before. Did you say, I can win this thing, or what the hell, I'll give it a shot?
Yeah, I went out for the first year, to be honest, and I don't know if a lot of people know that. Went out the first year, made it through the round of 50, and then they break it down into groups of 10, and I didn't end up making it. And I was a little bit pissed off about the fact. I'm not going to lie to you. I said, geez, I thought I was the best one in the group. I thought I should have been there, but I wasn't. And I said, you got to keep going out for something like this because it's really a no-lose situation. It's not like you're losing anything by auditioning. So, yeah, I saw the contest, and I was like, this is perfect for me. I have the experience. I have the background. Let's try and make the most of it.
You know, sports radio is not for everyone. Obviously, for me and you, it is. Sports radio, specifically WFAN, it's a community, and especially the overnights. Now, the JJ After Dark, you're working a lot of overnights, and it's a really tight-knit community. Any person that's worked those shifts will tell you. Were you accepted with open arms with the community, so to speak, or was it a gradual process to get to know these people and them really accept the JJ After Dark brand, like you said?
That's a really, really good question. I would say it's a mixed bag. I think when I first came on the air, I do the sort of show where, yeah, I'll let the callers definitely get their piece, and I think I'm pretty judicious and fair where I give the callers a good amount of time when I do an overnight show, especially when we don't have a lot of spots. But at times, I'm going to blow a caller up when they say something stupid. I'm going to take them to task. I'm going to yell at them if need be. And I think when I first started, there were some people from the overnight audience who maybe were a little bit taken aback by that. I didn't really care, but it is what it is. So you had some that maybe thought I was a little too brash and a little too young to be hosting on the radio station, but hey, that's their problem. But then I had another group of people who was great from the get-go, who really appreciated my passion, who really appreciated my enthusiasm. And I would say that was like 60 to 70% of the overnight audience. And then that other 25 to 30%, I've kind of taken them under my wing, and they've kind of just come to the JJ After Dark cult, if you will. Bri, like, I did an appearance, actually, it's funny, at a Home Depot about a month ago, and this older woman comes up to me, and she was like, I got to be honest with you, JJ, when you first started, I thought you were a crazy person. I didn't really get you, and now I have to admit, I listen to you every night. I love your show. I think you're amazing, and you're one of my favorite people to host at the radio station. So it just shows you, man, that some people, you got to be on for at least 6 months to a year, or maybe even 2 to 3 years before they really get used to you, because everybody's kind of ingrained in the same people being on FAN all the time,
the
same voices being heard all the time. So sometimes when you hear a new guy, it's just weird for some people, and maybe it just takes some time. But here we are, Brian, almost 5 years later, and still kicking.
I'm not going to lie. I was one of those people when you first started. I thought, you know what? I'm not sure about this guy. And I think it's exactly what you said. I mean, there's so little movement, especially on a station like WFAN. I'm like, I don't know about this guy. But the more I've listened to you, I think you're one of the best on the station. In fact, I think you should get a lot more airtime so everyone can hear it. We'll put it that way. How can you maintain, like, so you talk about how you blow callers up, and you gave a fiery Yankee monologue a few weeks ago. How do you maintain that much energy late at night?
Dude.
Is your performance enhanced?
Me being me. No, there's no substances that are being used. I may have a cup of coffee here or there. Okay. I'm just a crazy person. That's really the best way to put it, Brian. I am energetic. I am zany. I will sleep for 3 to 4 hours, some days 7 to 8 hours, and I'm ready to go in there and just take names and kick ass. That's just the way I view sports radio. I'm not one of these guys, and if I ever get to this point, it's time for me to get it out of the business where I seem like I'm mailing it in. You'll never get that from me. I try to go in. I try to give it my very best. I'm not going to fake enthusiasm because That's just not the kind of person I am. I just think that's my personality. That's my nature, and I try to bring it across that way on the air.
What was I going to say? At what point, so you're working there, and that energy, what I was going to say is, I used to work third shift too, obviously not in the same field, and I wasn't even trying to entertain people, and I had trouble staying awake. So I really admire you, being able in the wee hours of the nights, taking some of the calls, and I'm not going to trash your audience, but, some of the calls that they're a little out there at that hour of the night. So that's a great job out of you, and only a few cups of coffee, like that's pretty good. I mean, I need about 5 or 6.
No, here's the deal, though, Brian. You got to, find a rhythm, too. I'll bounce around, as you know, with my schedule between FAN and CBS, where I'll go from doing an overnight, and then the following night I'm hosting, from 6 to 10 p.m., and you make it work. But when you get in that rhythm of hosting overnights 5 nights a week, you find a nice pattern. You go to bed at 7 in the morning. You get up anywhere from 1 to 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and you go from there. When I bounce around, that's when everything gets all out of whack. But you make it work. You'll sleep 2 hours here. You'll sleep 3 hours here, and it's worth it because you love what you do. Right.
No, you're living the dream, like you say. Let's see. So CBS Sports Network, you mentioned that. Now, at what point did CBS management come to you and say, listen, this Phenom, the idea with the Phenom, for people that don't know, you get a year of your own show. When did they approach you and say, listen, we like what you're doing here. We want to keep you on full time and maybe even get you involved in the CBS Sports Network, which is the national CBS sports show?
That's a really good question. So as you know, that Phenom contest is 1 year. And I noticed probably by about halfway through, you know how it works where it's literally 1 day a week for 2 hours. But I noticed come holiday time and once the winter time hit where I was 4 or 5 months in, they started giving me more and more work as far as filling shifts and overnight here and overnight there. And I was loving it. I was like, all right, good. They're giving me more exposure. They're giving me more airtime. This is really, really good. And there was never really a formal conversation at the end of the 1 year. It was just like, JJ, we like what you're doing. We don't have anything for you on a full-time basis at the moment, but we're going to continue to have a pretty good amount of fill-in shifts for you if that makes you happy. And I was like, yeah, it's WFAN. This is where you want to be. I'm not going to look to go anywhere for the time being, so I'm just going to keep building my brand here, and that's exactly what I did. I ended up picking up finally a permanent Saturday into Sunday overnight where, as you know, when we have open nights, when people take off, when there's shuffling in the schedule, that's when they work me in where it's 2 days here, 4 days here, 3 days here, 5 days here. But at least I know every Saturday, Sunday night, no matter what's going on, I'm going to be on the air. And essentially how it worked with CBS Sports Network or CBS Sports Radio is very simple. They launched, as you know, in January of 2013. So I was probably at FAN at this point by about a year and a half. So as the network was launching, one of my bosses over at FAN, Eric Spitz, got the nod to run CBS Sports Radio. So I sent him an email, just very casually, just mentioned it to him. Hey, congrats on a new job. Very happy for you. As far as fill-in shifts, I would very much like to be in the mix for when something comes available over at CBS Sports Radio. And, of course, Eric gave me the very casual, I already had you in mind, which is great. So I'm glad to know that bosses like me, which is key. Although sometimes I probably drive them crazy, but hopefully they don't want to admit that on record. So, I started that January 2013, the network launched, and by February I was pretty much filling in all over the place, doing the overnight shows over there, doing Pharrell's show, doing Damon Amendola show, or at the time was the Mojo show. So it was just, shift after shift after shift. And obviously got to have flexibility, got to make sure that I can work it around FAN. But they do a really good job of that because everybody's on the same floor and everybody's in the same building. So for me, it's the best of both worlds. I get the chance to do local radio at FAN and then get to do national radio, which is something, Brian, I never in a million years thought I would do, but I really enjoy it. It's a different challenge for me, but it's a very different type of show, and it's great. When you're on in like 50 or 60 different affiliates, including some really big cities like Boston, Washington, and Los Angeles and Dallas, it's pretty cool.
Yeah, so let me ask you about that. I had your colleague Chris Moore on the podcast a while ago, and I asked him the same question because he sort of does the same thing you do. He'll work with CBS Sports Radio and WFAN, shifts here and there. What are the biggest challenges from doing a local show as compared to a national show?
It's very different. When you do a New York-centric show, you know that the local teams are always going to drive the conversation. Yankees, Mets during the baseball season, Giants, Jets during football, Knicks, Rangers during the playoffs, whatever the case may be. You'll mix in national stories, especially I will when I do fan shows, because I'm just, I think, much more cognizant of what's going on, whether it's Steph Curry, whether it's the NCAA tournament. I just like doing the big picture sometimes on FAN, but I realize that you got to hammer the local stuff, and the local stuff will always get you calls and it will always get you reaction. But when you do national, you got to figure out, okay, what general storylines are really going to get people tuned in, locked in, and captivated. You know what I mean?
You have to be on top of college football, I assume, because it's a non-story basically in New York.
No question. People don't realize that, Brian. NFL's number one nationwide. I would argue college football might even be ahead of the NBA. And that's another thing. A lot of people who work at FAN would say, okay, you go on a national show, you can do wall-to-wall baseball. Nonsense. If you try to do baseball for 3 or 4 hours on the network, you will have dead phone lines. You will have zero reaction. Unless you have something like this Odor Bautista thing,
right,
or you have something about Bryce Harper, you got to find those lightning rod topics that you can get reaction on both sides of the fence. But if you just try breaking down like the standings, like the Philadelphia Phillies are off to a great start, nobody cares. Nobody cares. But like in the NBA, you can get into the players, right? Because you have Curry, you have LeBron. They're always going to gravitate attention towards those specific players. Baseball doesn't have as much of that. So you realize you're going to do a lot more college football. You're going to do a lot more NBA. You're going to do a lot less baseball. You have to approach it differently. I tease a lot more. I'm not a huge guy as far as teasing on FAN. I'll do it. But sometimes when you're doing 4 hours of Yankees and Mets, it's very hard to get creative. And the New York audience is just not looking for crazy, crazy teases, in my opinion. It's just not. It's just not that sort of audience. But when you're doing a show in 50 different markets, you kind of want to appeal to everybody. You're not going to be able to appeal to Boise, Idaho. I get that. But somebody may be listening and saying, okay, they're down in D.C. He's been doing 2 hours of NBA talk. He's going to mention Bryce Harper. The guy's been kicking ass. He's hit 5 home runs this week. He's telling the umpire, F you. That's the sort of thing where you say, okay, coming up next on a busy show, Bryce Harper making baseball fun again. Just by mentioning that, you feel like you're including everybody. So I'm more cognizant of that for sure when I'm doing a network show.
This may be a total non-issue, but after what you were just saying, you pronounce Bryce Harper, Bryce Harper. Now, you have a pronounced New York accent, and I'm sure you probably agree with extreme amount of pride. Were your superiors worried about putting you on, like CBS, the sports radio, the national radio, with such an accent? Because, listen, we're all one country, but some places are deeply divided, and a lot of people don't like New York.
It's a great question. It's a great point. I got an interesting piece of advice when I was at college from one of the best in the business, Bob Costas. I think we can both agree Costas is a legend. Yes. One day I could make maybe 100th of what he's made in his career over at NBC. I asked him because I was never one of these guys, Brian, that wanted to change my accent. I'm very proud of where I'm from. This is the way I sound. I'm a unique kind of character. So, I never had plans on changing the way I speak. But I asked Costas about it. I said, look, sports radio, is it something you would consider? He goes, no, I think you need to be you, and I think that matters. And thankfully, my superiors have never, and I quote, never, given me a hard time about the way I speak. And quite frankly, a lot of times on network, I get tweets and comments from people saying, love the accent, love the way you sound, you're unique, you're different, and we just appreciate the content that you bring to the table. And ultimately, Brian, that's what should matter. The way you bring your show to the forefront, the topics you're discussing. Yeah, you may have a rough around the edges voice. Maybe your grammar at times is not going to be perfect like you're in a theology class or like you're in philosophy 191. You want to sound like an everyday guy. That's what I try to do. I don't try to talk like I'm above people, because you're not. You know what? People want to be able to relate to you, whether it's on a national level, whether it's on a local level. If you're relatable to the audience, it will work.
That's actually great. I'm glad no one ever really gave you any real crap about that, any bosses or anything. That's actually good to hear. We're talking about New York accents. So let's jump into some sports here. Now, a few weeks ago, I mentioned this, that you had a pretty fiery opening, ripping the Yankees. It was really good. And so the Yankees, they've won 3 series in a row now. I know how things work on sports radio. It's minute by minute. Do you feel any different about the team now, or do they still look like they're going to be bottom feeders when it's all said and done?
Well, I'm a little bit more optimistic, but the Yankees still have a long way to go before they earn my trust back. They're still 4 games under 500. The starting rotation is a mess. The lineup is consistently inconsistent, where they've been hitting well over the 7-3 homestand, a homestand that, quite frankly, was a season saver. They needed to have a big homestand. They did just that, and you want to have a relevant summer. I know that the bar has been lowered so considerably for the Yankees, because 4 or 5 years ago, the team would be in the ALCS, and they lose in 4 or 5 games, and it's like, oh my goodness, this season is a colossal failure. So it shows you how times have changed. But they still have a long way to go. I don't look at this team as an elite-level team. They can maybe get back in the mix. Would I pick them to make the postseason from what I've seen over the first month and change? No, Brian, I don't. And hopefully it's a season that has a lot more juice and picks up over the next couple months, but I'm not just going to let 10 games fool me over what I've seen over the last month and a half.
I think I'm going to start asking every guest this, so you're the first one, all right? In terms of Alex Rodriguez, what is your best guess? What is A-Rod Corp?
A-Rod Corp?
You don't know? You don't even know anything about this?
No, I don't. You got to enlighten me here.
Okay, so there is a website, www.arod.corp.com, and it's supposed, it's going to be Alex Rodriguez's website. It's been under construction for, I'd say, I don't know, about 8-9 months, and he wears a jacket with that same insignia on it around. So I'm just trying to ascertain what exactly A-Rod Corp is all about.
This is amazing. This is the first time I've ever heard about this. And you know I'm locked into everything.
Oh, you got to check it out.
Positively no idea what you're talking about. And here's what I'm going to do. Because we're doing this podcast and I'm sitting here and I got my laptop right in front of me, the thing of beauty about technology is I can actually do this while I'm doing the podcast. So give me the it is A-Rod Corp. What the hell is this?
www.arod. Shoot, oh man, I gotta actually find it here now. Hold on.
Well, I'll Google it. We got Google. Google's
there we
a beautiful thing. So what is it? A-Rod Corp.
It's www.arodcorp.com.
Here we go. A-Rod Corp.
And what does it
like
say?
The logo of A-Rod hitting.
Right. What does it say?
Thank you for visiting. Here we go. How about this? We're breaking news on a podcast, by the way. To me, of all people. A-Rod Corp. Thank you for visiting. This is the website for A-Rod Corp. The site is being developed, and we welcome a return visit.
Yeah, so he is wearing that jacket like 2 days ago, the day that he gave out the bats at Yankee Stadium. Was it yesterday or was it Saturday? And he's in the Bronx before meeting with people and everything, and he has a jacket with that same insignia on it.
Interesting. What exactly he's trying to do with a website, who the hell knows? I just know for the Yankees' sake, Brian, even though he's 40, pushing 41, they need that power bat in the middle of the order as soon as possible.
They do. They do. So you're a Yankee fan, and the Mets. I mean, they're in a mini slump right now. They're in the World Series last year, but they start off the season so wonderful that it didn't really matter. So you're a Yankee fan. How difficult is it to leave the fandom at the door when you have Mets fans calling in and crowing about the team, or in any of the sports that you follow? I mean, you're a fan. So how difficult is that, listening to that?
It could be tough at times. It was a lot worse with the Jets and the Dolphins for me.
Oh, that's right. You're a Dolphins fan.
I'm a Dolphins fan. And honestly, one of the most painful shows I ever had to do. I don't know if you remember this. Going back to the 2013 season, the Dolphins were 9-5. They were coming off unbelievable back-to-back wins over the Steelers and the Patriots. And I'm thinking, oh, geez, this team's finally turned the corner. They're finally going to get into the playoffs. They're finally going to give me a reason to smile in January. They get shut out by the Bills. But even with that shutout, they had a winning scenario. What's standing in their way? Geno Smith, Rex Ryan, and the New York Jets. And the Jets beat the Dolphins, knocked my team out of the playoffs. I got to go in and host the overnight at 2 o'clock in the morning. I was crushed. I was devastated. It was painful. But it was a platform for me to vent. So I was not in good spirits, obviously, going in and doing the show. And it's not like doing the show made things any easier, but at least it was my outlet to yell and scream and just do the sort of things I'd be doing anyway. But I actually had an audience listen to my frustration. The Mets going to the World Series, honestly, Brian, I thought it was cool. Like, I wasn't rooting for them. Full disclosure here, because, as you know, I'm a betting man. And I had a few shekels on the Cubbies and their series price, and I made those shekels back by taking the Royals and their series price. But the Mets being in the World Series, it made the shows that much more entertaining. So I look at it from that way. Like, am I a Mets fan? No. Am I going to be waving pom-poms for the New York Mets? No. But I'll be fair with any of these teams, Brian. Obviously, I root against certain teams, but just because I root against a certain team, like I root against the New York Jets, am I going to come on the air and say Ryan Fitzpatrick sucks and Brandon Marshall didn't have a good year when we all know that Fitzpatrick threw for 30 touchdowns and Brandon Marshall was unbelievable? Of course not. I'm going to be fair with the audience. So, yeah, I'm going to have certain allegiances to sports teams, and I'm never going to give those allegiances away, but it doesn't mean I won't be fair with a specific group.
That's tough. I realize that I think a lot of people, you hear people say, well, I could do a sports radio show, and I could definitely do it. But going into the studio and not being discombobulated because of calls like that, I think is a lot easier said than done. So that's a good job out of you. The other New York team I wanted to talk about, the team stinks, and it's not even in season. But what, in your opinion, what are the New York Knicks doing?
I wish I could give you
it's a pretty broad question.
Yeah, I wish I could give you an answer. Aside from Porzingis and the draft pick, Jackson's tenure has been an embarrassment of epic proportions. I have no idea what he's trying to do. I don't understand why they are so hell-bent on this ludicrous, stupid triangle offense. It's like all of a sudden the triangle offense made Michael Jordan, Scottie Pippen, and made Shaquille O'Neal and Kobe Bryant. Look, Phil Jackson had great success with the Bulls. He had great success with the Lakers. They didn't win a darn thing before he got there, but Phil Jackson doesn't have MJ and Pippen. He doesn't have Shaq and Kobe. So you need to get players in here. You need to get a coach in here. I want to actually give you a piece of optimistic news on the Knicks, and I mentioned this yesterday doing the show. The fact that they're actually interviewing guys like Frank Vogel and Jeff Hornacek, that's a good thing, because these are guys who know how to coach. If they bring in somebody who is actually a bona fide, legitimate NBA head coaching candidate, I don't care who it is. As long as it's not Kurt Rambis, Brian, hallelujah, praise Jesus, because I can't sit through a year with Kurt Rambis and the Knicks giving me another reason to just throw them right down the toilet as the season starts.
My final question, and yeah, the Knicks, a once proud franchise, not a lot of championships to back it up, but the last 10 or 15 years have just been rough. And now, what is it all about anymore? Now it's just all sorts of just smoke signals coming from the Garden with Carmelo and Dolan. And for once, Dolan is not the most hated man in Madison Square Garden, so relish that moment, I think. And
isn't it amazing, Brian, that Knicks fans now are calling people like me and calling radio stations saying that they should have James Dolan have more of an active role on the team when for 10 or 15 years everybody said,
away.
Get out of the way. Just let somebody run the team and do whatever they want. Well, he's doing that now with Phil Jackson, and the results, they haven't been pretty.
No, they've been very, they haven't even been similar. I'd say they've been worse, which is hard to believe, I think. But my final question for you, John Jastremski, is why did you deflate Tom Brady's footballs?
No comment. No comment. You're going to have to ask my friends up in New England. I don't want to get in any trouble. So I know Tommy's got a legal battle he's fighting right now, and Tommy wants to be on the field week 2 against my Dolphins. So I don't know. Maybe it's a Dolphin conspiracy theory. Maybe I'm just buddy, who you'll never know, Brian. I keep that information close to the vest.
How brutal was the reaction on Twitter? Did people give you crap that John Jastremski actually deflated the footballs there in New England?
It was just more playful than anything else.
I wasn't sure if some people
really serious. No, nobody actually thought I was the guy deflating the football, so I didn't hear it from any New England fans or any football fans around the league, because people look at my profile and they're like, oh, you're a sports radio host. You're not working for the New England Patriots. So it was more good-natured and good fun, but nothing to the, oh, my God, I hate you, I'm going to kill you. No death threats were sent to my house, at least none of that I'm aware of. So I think we're all right.
I want to thank John Jastremski for coming on the Red Ticket Blues podcast. But before you go, I have 3 quick questions to play us out. You ready?
Let's do it.
All right, number 1, what is the craziest phone call or trade proposal you've ever heard?
Wow, that's a good one. I wish I had 3 years to think about this, because I get one on a regular basis. I'm going to think of one that I got a month ago, and it's probably not the craziest just because I can't remember some of the loony and crazy trade proposals that I've gotten over the last 5 years. How about the idea of trading Matt Harvey for Dellin Betances? I think that's pretty crazy.
Straight up.
Although, in the grand scheme, I think we've heard much worse, because normally Met fans, and we have this one caller, I forget his name, he just gives me these stupid, asinine, ridiculous trade proposals. I think one of them was Lucas Duda, Zach Wheeler, and Wilmer Flores for Paul Goldschmidt. I'm like, dude, try again. Stop it.
Do you like trade proposals?
They're fun. Sometimes I actually get, in all fairness, Brian, you actually will get a good amount of decent trade proposals from callers, but then you get ones where everybody's just trying to rip the other team off, and it doesn't work.
Right. Number 2, have you ever owned a pair of Jordans?
I have. I absolutely have owned a pair of Michael Jordan sneakers, no doubt.
Okay. And number 3, who is the one person you want to interview above everyone else?
Wow, that's a good question. If I could have one person on the show.
That's right, one person.
It would not be a boring interview. I would probably, I met Dan Marino. If I hadn't met Dan Marino, I would have said Dan Marino, hands down. But I think the current or former athlete I'd want to interview, Peyton Manning.
That'd be interesting.
Peyton Manning. Just because he's so smart, he knows the game so well, he knows the position so well. Peyton Manning. Yeah, that would be my guy. I think most people, Brian, would give you the Tiger Woods answer or the Alex Rodriguez answer.
I think Francesa said that today with Tiger Woods. Francesa said the same thing.
Yeah, Tiger Woods would be the one that a lot of people would tell you. And A-Rod probably would have been my choice. But I also think A-Rod's not going to comment on any of his steroid stuff. So because of the fact that he's not going to comment, the interview wouldn't be as juicy. So I'd rather talk about the intricacies of a position, what guys he likes, schemes, how he goes about preparation. I'd say Peyton Manning.
That's a good answer. Good answer. He is John Jastremski, WFAN sports talk show host and CBS sports talk show host. You can follow him on Twitter at John_Jastremski. He has a nice blue verified check mark. John,
don't ask how that happened, Brian. I wish I know the answer. I have no idea.
Be happy. Keep up the good work. JJ After Dark. John, thanks a lot.
Brian, a pleasure.
There he was. That's John Jastremski. I hope everyone enjoyed it. I did. He's a very likable, down to earth guy. It was a lot of fun. And JJ After Dark is a great show to listen to if you have the opportunity. So remember where you can find this lovely podcast. It's on iTunes, TuneIn Radio, Stitcher, YouTube, and Google Play. And I'll try to be doing another podcast on a Wednesday. It's, again, traveling this week. The schedule's all messed up. So the best way so you don't miss an episode is to subscribe. And if you haven't left a rating at wherever you're listening to it yet, then what are you waiting for? Seriously, do I have to beg? I'll beg. I've done it before. I'll continue doing it. I have no shame. Follow me on Twitter at BrianBuck13 and at Red Ticket Blues. Remember to do all those things, and everyone enjoy yourself. I'm out of here.